Back in 2015, a marine geologist and a geophysicist announced the discovery of a 12-meter-long limestone monolith at a depth of 40 meters in the Sicilian Channel. This was a highly significant find because, according to their interpretation, this megalith was human-made and must have become submerged with sea level rise more than 9,000 years ago. There is no evidence for megalith-building cultures in the central Mediterranean that far back during the Mesolithic, and the earliest stone monuments in Sicily and Pantelleria, the closest places to the discovery, appear much later, well after the period when this particular area was above sea level. Since the discovery of the monolith, further research has been released on other possible submerged anthropomorphic features in the area, including a particularly interesting paper that came out in 2024. So were Mesolithic hunter-gatherers building megaliths on the land that once existed south of Sicily? Or does it sound too good to be true? Let's look at the evidence together and see what we can find. The monolith was discovered on the Adventure Plateau, the shallowest part of the Sicilian Channel. During the last glacial maximum, when sea levels were more than 100 meters lower than they are today, this plateau formed part of a larger landmass connected to Sicily. The elongated rock was found on a submerged feature known as the Pantelleria Vecchia Bank, or PVB for short. Using high-resolution seabed mapping, underwater surveys, and geological analysis, researchers Lodolo and Ben Avraham reconstructed the ancient landscape. They found that the PVB consists of two main shoals linked by a 820-meter-long ridge that encloses a shallow embayment, along with several smaller shoals scattered throughout the area. It was on the floor of this embayment that the monolith was discovered. The stone measures approximately 12 meters in length and around 2 meters in diameter, although it is now broken into two sections. What attracted the researchers' attention was its unusually regular shape and the presence of 3 circular holes of similar size, one of which passes completely through the rock. These features led them to argue that the structure is unlikely to be entirely natural and instead shows evidence of human modification. Perhaps even more intriguing is the source of the stone itself. The monolith does not match the surrounding seabed geology, but it closely resembles rock found on a rectilinear ridge roughly 300 meters to the south. Lodolo and Ben Avraham therefore proposed that the block was quarried from this ridge, transported to its current location, and originally stood upright as a menhir erected by Mesolithic people before the area was submerged by rising seas. Not everyone was convinced. In 2015, the late Italian archaeologist Sebastiano Tusa published a detailed critique of this interpretation, drawing on geomorphological, contextual, and archaeological evidence to argue that the monolith could be explained as a natural feature rather than a prehistoric monument. The story didn't end with the monolith. In 2023, a new study led by a team that again included Lodolo and Ben Avraham turned its attention to the 2 prominent ridges that form part of the Pantelleria Vecchia Bank. Their goal was to determine whether these unusual underwater structures could also have been shaped by human activity. The researchers ultimately stopped short of claiming an anthropogenic origin, but they did identify several features they considered difficult to explain through natural processes alone. Firstly, they noted the ridge's remarkable orthogonal geometry. Rather than following the irregular patterns typically associated with natural landforms, the structures intersect at near right angles, giving them an unexpectedly geometric appearance. Secondly, Ridge 1 is approximately 10 times longer than Ridge 2, despite both sharing a broadly similar morphology. The team also noted that the 2 ridges lie at comparable depths, yet are composed of rocks of different ages. This, they argued, makes it unlikely that they formed together as beach rock deposits during the same phase of sea level change. Finally, they pointed to the block-like construction of Ridge 1 and its steep seaward-facing slopes, features they suggested are not easily accounted for by known geological processes. None of these observations prove that the ridges are artificial. However, the authors argued that taken together, they raise questions that remain unresolved and warrant further investigation. In other words, while the case for human construction remained unproven, the debate at that point was far from settled. The most recent development came in 2024 when another team of researchers, again including Lodolo and Ben Avraham, published a study examining another set of enigmatic features on the Pantelleria Vecchia Bank, 4 large concentric semicircular structures visible on the seabed. The researchers explored a wide range of possible explanations, both natural and human-made. On the natural side, they considered whether the half-rings could be the eroded remains of a dome-shaped geological fold that had been exposed when sea levels were lower. Other possibilities included ancient shoreline formations, the remnants of an impact crater, features created by karst processes, or even traces of past volcanic activity. Some of these hypotheses were supported by more evidence than others, but none could fully account for all of the observed characteristics. The anthropogenic explanations are even more interesting. If the structures were built by humans, the researchers suggested they might represent an ancient harbour or sheltered anchorage. Other possibilities included ceremonial monuments, enclosures used for fishing or aquaculture, defensive works protecting a settlement or harbour entrance, or even agricultural terraces constructed on what was once dry land. The available data can support multiple interpretations. Although the semicircular rings are certainly unusual, this does not necessarily mean they are artificial. The data provided no decisive evidence that they were built by humans, nor is there enough information to confidently rule out that possibility. In October 2024, a team of researchers published a paper in the Journal of Marine Science arguing that the evidence points towards a natural origin for the unusual features of the Pantelleria Vecchia Bank. Their conclusions echoed those put forward nearly a decade earlier by the late archaeologist Sebastiano Tusa, as discussed before, and they mentioned some of his work. According to the 2024 study, Ridge 1 and Ridge 2 are best understood as beach rock formations, sedimentary deposits that formed along ancient shorelines when the area was above sea level. The distinctive horizontally arranged blocks visible in Ridge 1, which had previously been cited as evidence of possible human construction, can be explained by post-depositional erosion. Similar patterns have been documented in beach rock formations elsewhere in the world. The researchers also suggest that the different rock compositions of the two ridges may simply reflect their formation under different environmental conditions and at different times. The same paper concludes that the semicircular rings are likely natural as well. Rather than being ancient harbours, defensive structures, or ceremonial monuments, they may be the result of late Miocene depositional processes or later coastal erosion acting on pre-existing geological formations. Perhaps most importantly, neither the ridges nor the semicircular rings have produced any direct archaeological evidence. No artifacts, tools, pottery, or other traces of human activity have been recovered from the surrounding seabed. While they mention that an absence of evidence is not necessarily evidence of absence, it does mean that the case for human construction currently rests almost entirely on the shapes of the features themselves. That leaves the monolith. The most compelling piece of evidence for those arguing in favour of it being a prehistoric monument is, if it was not quarried and transported by humans, how did it end up more than 300 meters away from the ridge composed of the same rock? The authors propose a much simpler explanation. As sea levels rose between roughly 9,500 and 9,200 years ago, coastal erosion could have detached a large block from Ridge 1. Later, when the Pantelleria Vecchia Bank existed as a small island during the Neolithic, storms, wave action, or even tsunamis may have further weakened and displaced the block, eventually carrying it into the embayment where it rests today. The holes in the monolith may also have natural explanations. Similar cavities are known to form in beach rock through a combination of biological activity, weathering, and water erosion in energetic coastal environments. The authors further note that the monolith's shape is less regular than originally described and that its 3 holes are not identical. 2 are shallow cavities, while only 1 passes completely through the rock. Rather than representing deliberate drilling, they may have formed through different natural processes acting at different times. Supporters of the anthropogenic interpretation have sometimes pointed out that the Pantelleria Vecchia Bank was dry land during the Mesolithic and therefore could have been occupied by humans. While this is certainly true, the researchers argue that accessibility alone is not evidence of construction. The possibility of human presence does not automatically imply that unusual geological features are archaeological. Over the years, Lodolo and his colleagues have also drawn comparisons with monumental sites such as Malta's megalithic temples and Göbekli Tepe, suggesting that complex prehistoric construction was not beyond the capabilities of ancient societies. However, these comparisons are problematic. The Maltese temples, although geographically close, date thousands of years after the Pantelleria Vecchia Bank was submerged, while Göbekli Tepe, although much older, lies over 1,500 kilometers away in southeastern Turkey. Both examples demonstrate that prehistoric people could build monuments, but neither provides direct evidence that they did so at that time in that part of the central Mediterranean. At present, the debate remains unresolved, but if we focus strictly on the available evidence, the natural explanation currently enjoys the stronger archaeological and geological support. Most of the work on the PVB and its features are open access and listed in the description below if you want to read more. They do go into a lot of detail. Let me know what you think about this debate in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.